Right now, put on your favorite song, the one that gives you chills. Notice that? That is not just a feeling, it is a physical reaction no other animal on Earth has. Tiny muscles under your skin are literally pulling your hair follicles upright. Scientists call it piloerection. You call it goosebumps. And here is the strange part. Dogs get goosebumps from cold. Cats get them from fear. Even a frightened gorilla will raise its fur to look bigger. But humans, we get them from a melody, from a voice, from 3 notes played in just the right order. Why? Let us start with the basics, because the science here is genuinely strange. Goosebumps are ancient. They come from a reflex called the piloerection reflex, controlled by your sympathetic nervous system, the exact same system that handles fight or flight when you are in danger. In animals with fur, this reflex makes complete sense. When a cat is scared, its fur stands up to make it look bigger, to a threat, the same way a frightened cat looks twice its normal size to a dog. When it is cold, fluffed up fur traps more warm air close to the skin, creating natural insulation. It is a simple, elegant survival mechanism that has existed for millions of years. Humans, on the other hand, barely have body hair anymore. We lost most of our fur somewhere around 2 million years ago, likely to help regulate body temperature while hunting in hot climates. We do not need this reflex to look bigger to predators. We do not need it to trap warm air, because we wear clothes now. Oh, here is the real puzzle. Why did evolution keep a reflex around that no longer served its original purpose? The answer is that the reflex never actually disappeared. It just found a completely new trigger. And in 2015, a team of researchers ran an experiment that fundamentally changed how scientists understand this. They scanned people's brains in real time while playing music specifically chosen to give listeners chills. And what they found was remarkable. The same reward pathway in the brain that lights up from eating great food, from physical intimacy, even from certain drugs, the dopamine reward system, activated at the exact moment participants reported feeling that chill down their spine. In other words, your brain treats a powerful piece of music the same way it treats winning a competition or the rush of falling in love. That is an enormous biological response to trigger from something as simple as organized sound waves moving through air. But here is where it gets even more interesting. Not everyone experiences this the same way. Only about 2/3 of people get strong chills from music at all. Researchers found this is linked to a specific personality trait called openness to experience. Essentially, people who feel emotions more vividly, who are more imaginative, and who actively seek out new sensations and experiences in life. Brain scans of these particularly responsive people show something fascinating. They have denser physical connections between the auditory cortex, which is the region that processes sound, and the emotional centers deep in the brain. It is not just a personality quirk, it is a measurable difference in brain wiring. Their brain is, quite literally, built to feel sound more deeply than the average person's brain. If you are someone who gets chills easily from music, your brain is not being overly dramatic. It is wired differently, and that difference is visible on a scan. But that still does not answer the deeper question we started with. Why would an ancient reflex meant purely for temperature regulation and danger response get hijacked by something as abstract as art? To understand this, we need to travel back, not just a few hundred years, but to a time before recorded music existed at all, to the earliest humans who ever made a deliberate sound on purpose, long before anything we would recognize as a song. Long before language as we understand it today, anthropologists believe early humans communicated through rhythm and pitch, clapping, humming, simple repetitive chanting around a shared fire at night. These were not songs in the modern sense. They were tools for survival. Researchers studying isolated tribal cultures with no exposure to modern music have found something remarkable. These primitive rhythmic patterns served a critical survival function. They synchronized group emotion. A group of early humans that feels the same emotional state at the same moment bonds faster, trusts each other more deeply, and is far more likely to cooperate when real danger appears. This is sometimes called the social glue theory of music's origin, and there is compelling evidence for it. Groups that engaged in synchronized rhythmic activity, Even something as simple as walking in step together show measurably higher levels of trust and cooperation in controlled studies compared to groups that do not. Now here is where the goosebump mystery starts connecting. Some researchers propose that the chill reflex triggered by music may actually be a leftover signal of something even older and more specific, what is sometimes called the separation cry response. In many social mammals, not just humans, but wolves, elephants, and several primate species, a very particular sound pattern triggers an automatic physical alert when a member of the group seems distant, distressed, or in potential danger. It is an ancient, hardwired warning system. And here is the key insight. Dramatic, swelling music mimics these ancient alarm bonding patterns almost perfectly. Sudden changes in volume, a rising pitch that builds tension, unexpected pauses that create anticipation. These are the exact same acoustic patterns that would have signaled something emotionally urgent to your ancestors thousands of generations ago. Your body may genuinely be reacting to a powerful song the same way your ancestors' bodies reacted to a sudden, emotionally significant moment within their social group, even though, rationally, you know there is no actual danger or separation happening. The reflex does not check for logic. It just responds to the pattern. This explains something almost everyone has noticed, but never really questioned. The chill from a song almost never hits randomly throughout the track. It hits at very specific, predictable moments. It is usually right when music does something your brain did not expect, a sudden key change, an abrupt silence after a build-up, or a vocalist's voice cracking with genuine emotion. Your ancient alert system is firing at the exact moment your brain registers a meaningful pattern shift, using the very same neural mechanism it would have used to register a meaningful shift in your physical environment thousands of years ago, back when missing that signal could mean the difference between safety and danger. In a strange and almost poetic way, every single time you get chills from a song, you are experiencing a survival reflex that your ancestors genuinely needed to stay emotionally connected to their group, just completely redirected by modern culture toward art instead of danger. And no other animal on Earth does this with sound, specifically because no other species evolved this exact combination of traits. Complex, language-based social bonding layered together with an ancient alert reflex that can be triggered by abstract patterns instead of only real, physical danger. This also explains something composers and musicians have understood instinctively for centuries, long before any of this science existed. Certain musical techniques reliably trigger chills across almost every human culture on the planet, regardless of musical tradition or language. Sudden dynamic shifts, moving from very quiet to very loud within just a few seconds, are among the single most reliable triggers known. It mimics a sudden, important change in the environment, the exact kind of shift your ancient alert system was built to notice immediately. Unexpected harmonic changes are another powerful trigger. When a song moves somewhere your brain genuinely did not predict, an unusual chord, a surprising key change, that element of surprise itself becomes part of the emotional payload your brain processes, and the human voice, especially when it cracks, strains, or trembles real emotion, is one of the single strongest triggers of all. That is because it mimics genuine, urgent distress or overwhelming joy coming from another real person, and your brain has no separate processing system for real versus performed emotional signals. It just responds. This is also why live music tends to hit people differently, often far more intensely, than the exact same recording played through headphones. Being physically present in a crowd of other humans, all reacting to the same powerful sound at the same moment, dramatically amplifies that ancient social bonding signal we talked about earlier. Concerts, in a very real biological sense, recreate the precise ancestral scenario this reflex originally evolved for. A group of humans, physically together, emotionally synchronized, gathered around one powerful, shared sound source. It is the campfire chant, just scaled up with electricity and speakers, which might genuinely explain why a single unforgettable concert moment can feel more emotionally significant, more vivid in memory years later, than almost anything else in modern everyday life. Now here is something worth thinking about on a more personal level. The specific songs that give you chills are almost never random. They are usually tied directly to a real memory, a specific person, or a particular moment that mattered in your life. Researchers studying this have found that the goosebump reflex measurably strengthens when a song is connected to autobiographical memory, meaning the chill you feel is not only about the raw sound itself. It is about your brain actively reliving an emotional moment it previously marked as significant and worth remembering. This is exactly why the same song can give you chills for years, even decades, while a brand new, technically flawless, perfectly produced song might do absolutely nothing for you emotionally. Your brain is not simply rating the musical quality. It is actively cross-referencing the sound against your personal emotional history. Some scientists believe this same mechanism is also tied to why grief and music are so deeply, almost inseparably connected for most people. A song played at a funeral or a simple melody your parent used to hum to you as a child can trigger powerful chills decades later. Her ancient alert system recognizing deep emotional significance, not danger, but treating it with the same biological urgency. There is another layer to this that most people never consider. Why certain genres seem almost engineered to produce this effect more than others. Film scores, for instance, are notorious for triggering chills, and that is not an accident. Composers writing for film deliberately study the exact acoustic patterns we have been talking about, the sudden swells, the held silences right before a reveal, the strings building in pitch just before an emotional climax on screen. They are essentially reverse engineering your ancient alert reflex on purpose, frame by frame, to make a movie moment feel more powerful than it would with no music at all. Choral music, especially when many voices blend into a single overwhelming wall of sound, tends to be one of the most universally chill-inducing experiences across cultures. Researchers believe this connects directly back to the group bonding theory we discussed earlier. A single voice can move you, but dozens of voices synchronized perfectly together replicate, almost too perfectly, that ancient image of an entire group emotionally united at once, which is exactly the survival scenario this reflex was built to recognize. There is also a fascinating asymmetry in how this reflex responds to major versus minor musical keys. You might expect that sad, minor key music would trigger fewer chills than uplifting, major key music, but multiple studies have found something close to the opposite. Music that blends both, moments of darkness followed immediately by unexpected brightness, or the reverse, tends to produce far stronger physical reactions than music that stays purely happy or purely sad throughout. Your brain, it seems, is most affected not by emotion itself, but by emotional contrast and unpredictability. This might also explain a strange pattern many people notice but rarely think about. Chills tend to fade with repeated listening, then sometimes return unexpectedly months or years later. The first 10 times you hear a powerful song, your brain is still actively detecting unexpected pattern shifts, so the reflex fires strongly. Once the pattern becomes fully familiar, predictability replaces surprise, and the physical chill response naturally weakens. But if you do not hear that song for a long stretch of time, and then encounter it again unexpectedly, both the element of surprise and the attached memory reactivate together, often producing an even stronger reaction than the very first time you heard it. Interestingly, researchers have also found measurable differences in this reflex across age groups. Older adults often report fewer chills from unfamiliar new music, but stronger, more consistent chills from music tied to their own personal past, particularly songs from their teenage years and early adulthood, a period researchers call the reminiscence bump, when emotional memories tend to be encoded most vividly and permanently in the brain. There is one more piece of this puzzle worth exploring before we close. Why some people actively seek out sad music specifically to trigger this reaction, even when it makes them feel emotionally heavy afterward. This seems contradictory at first. Why would anyone choose to feel something uncomfortable on purpose? Psychologists studying this have found that the chill response from melancholic music often comes paired with a release of prolactin, a hormone typically associated with comfort and bonding, the same hormone that spikes after crying. In other words, sad music can trigger a kind of safe emotional release. Your body gets to experience grief, longing, or loss within a completely controlled, non-threatening environment with no real loss actually happening. It is emotional practice, in a sense, with absolutely no real-world risk attached. This may also explain why this specific reflex seems to strengthen, rather than weaken, during periods of major life transition, breakups, grief, moving to a new city, starting a new chapter of life. During these periods, people consistently report stronger and more frequent chill responses to music than during emotionally stable periods. Your brain, it seems, becomes more emotionally porous during transitions, more ready to physically respond to meaningful patterns, because it is actively trying to process and integrate a lot of new emotional information all at once. So the next time a song unexpectedly gives you chills down your spine, know this. You are not imagining it, and you are absolutely not being overly sensitive. You are experiencing a physical reflex older than spoken language itself, one that your modern brain has cleverly repurposed to mark moments that genuinely matter to you. Out of every single species alive on this planet today, you belong to the only one whose body physically reacts to art, to pure, abstract, invented sound, the same way it once reacted to real life-or-death survival moments. That is not a small thing. That might be one of the most quietly remarkable things about being human. So here is a question for you. What is the one song that always, without fail, gives you chills? Do you actually know why that specific one affects you? Drop it in the comments below. I genuinely want to read every single one. If this changed the way you think about something as simple and ordinary as a chill running down your spine, that is exactly what this channel is built around, taking strange, completely overlooked human reactions and actually explaining the real science and history behind them. Subscribe, because next time we are answering a question even stranger than this one. And once you hear the answer, you will probably never think about it the same way again. I will see you in the next video.